There is a silence deeper than any sound you have ever heard, a stillness more alive than any movement you have ever witnessed. And within that silence, within that stillness, something extraordinary is always happening. Something is always being created. Something is always being called forth from the invisible depths of your being into the visible theater of your life. And the profound mystery, the thing that most people will never understand, the thing that most people will spend their entire lives running past without ever stopping to perceive, is that this creation, this constant unfolding of experience and circumstance and relationship and reality, is not the product of your striving. It is not the product of your effort. It is not won through force or acquired through struggle. It arises as naturally and as inevitably as the dawn from a place of absolute rest. Let this settle into your spirit. Rest is not the absence of creation. Rest is the very condition in which the deepest and most powerful creation becomes possible. This is one of the most misunderstood truths in the entire landscape of human consciousness. And it is misunderstood precisely because we have been taught from birth that achievement requires strain, that success demands effort, that transformation is a thing you must wrestle from the world with bleeding hands. We have inherited a psychology of war, a constant, grinding, exhausting war against circumstances, against lack, against limitation, when the deepest teaching of every genuine wisdom tradition that has ever breathed on this earth points in exactly the opposite direction. The truth is that the universe does not respond to your effort. It responds to your state. It responds to your inner identity. It responds to what you have quietly, deeply, and completely consented to be. Understand this, because everything you will ever experience in this life depends on your grasp of this one principle. There is an invisible law at work beneath the surface of all things, a silent governor of experience that operates not according to what you do, but according to what you are. Not according to how hard you try, but according to how deeply you believe. Not according to the actions you take in the outer world, but according to the state you inhabit in the inner world. This law is not partial. It is not selective. It does not make exceptions for the deserving or the educated or the spiritually sophisticated. It is perfectly, completely, mathematically impartial. It mirrors back to you, with absolute precision, without delay or distortion, exactly what you have agreed to be on the inside. And this is why the wisest teachers throughout all of history, from the ancient mystery schools to the great mystics of every tradition, from the contemplative monks in their silent cells to the bold visionaries who changed the face of civilization, all of them, in their own language, pointing always toward the same truth, have taught this: change the inner, and the outer must follow. Change the assumption, and the reality must shift. Change the state, and the world around you cannot remain as it was. You must realize that you are not a passive observer of your own experience. You are not a leaf being blown by the wind of circumstance. You are the consciousness from which that wind arises. You are not living inside a world that determines your fate. You are the awareness that generates the very conditions you perceive as your world. Neville Goddard understood this with a clarity that few have ever achieved, and he taught it relentlessly, tirelessly, in language so direct and so practical that it cut through every veil of mystical obscuration and placed the power of creation back where it has always belonged, inside you, in the only place it has ever been, in the infinite and living field of your own imagination. Imagination is not fantasy. Imagination is not escapism. Imagination is not the idle play of a bored mind drifting away from reality. Imagination is the womb of reality. Imagination is the generative matrix from which every experience you have ever had first emerged as an invisible seed before it became a visible fact. Everything you see around you, the room you sit in, the relationships that surround you, the conditions of your body, the texture of your financial life, the quality of your emotional experience, all of it first lived in imagination before it lived in the world. All of it was first a state assumed within consciousness, before it was a circumstance encountered in time. Feel this deeply. Let this truth move through you like a wave. If imagination is the womb of reality, then changing what you imagine, changing not just what you picture, but what you feel, what you inhabit, what you identify as, is the act of changing reality at its most fundamental level. Not at the surface where most people spend all their energy trying to rearrange things, but at the root, at the source, where the world is constantly being born. And this is where the teaching of rest becomes revolutionary. Because the kind of imagining that actually creates, the kind that actually plants seeds in the soil of the subconscious mind, and causes them to grow into inevitable outer experience. This kind of imagining is not effortful. It is not strained. It is not performed with clenched teeth and white knuckles. It is done in a state of relaxed, open, surrendered receiving. It is done when the noise of the analytical mind has grown quiet enough for the deeper intelligence of the heart to speak. It is done when you stop pushing against your current reality long enough to feel the reality you desire as already present, already given, already yours. The strain, the trying, the efforting, all of that belongs to the outer mind, the surface consciousness that judges by appearances and measures by what it can currently see. But creation does not happen at the surface. Creation happens in the depths, and the depths are only accessible through stillness. Think of the seed buried in dark, silent earth. It does not strain toward the sun. It does not effortfully push itself into being a flower. It simply is what it is, in the dark quiet of the soil, and something in its nature, something in its very identity as a seed, draws forth from the invisible world everything it needs to become what it was always meant to be. The sunlight comes to it, the rain finds it, the minerals in the earth orient toward it. All of creation conspires to serve the unfolding of what is already latent within it. And it happens not through the seed's effort, but through the seed's nature, through what the seed fundamentally is. This is the model. This is the teaching. You do not create your reality through effort. You create it through identity. You create it through what you fundamentally, deeply, and quietly assume yourself to be. This is why the ancient text speaks with such compressed and concentrated wisdom when it gives us those two words that contain an entire universe of creative power. I am. Not I will be. Not I am trying to become. Not I hope to one day be. I am. Present tense. Complete. Declared from the stillness of pure being before any external evidence has arrived to confirm it. In the Gospel of John, the great teaching is embedded so deeply that most people read right past it. Before Abraham was, I am. Not I was, not I will be, I am. This is consciousness speaking from outside of time, declaring its nature beyond the reach of circumstance, beyond the grip of history, beyond the evidence of the present moment. And this is precisely the creative posture that Neville Goddard taught so urgently and so beautifully. That what follows your declaration of I am is not simply a description of what you currently experience. It is a command to the universe. It is an instruction to the subconscious mind. It is a seed planted in the most fertile soil in all of existence, the soil of your own deeply held, deeply felt sense of identity. What you say after I am, consciously or unconsciously, deliberately or by default, in moments of high intention or in the casual drift of habitual thought, becomes your lived experience. If you say, I am unworthy, the universe does not argue with you. It simply delivers the precise conditions that match that declaration. If you say, I am lacking, creation does not correct you or compensate for your error. It mirrors your declaration back to you with perfect fidelity. But if you say, quietly, in the stillness of your own interior, without needing the outer world to first agree, if you say, I am whole, if you feel, I am abundant, if you embody, I am loved, if you consent to, I am the kind of person for whom this works, then that same impartial law, that same silent governor, must honor your declaration and rearrange the furniture of your outer world to match it. This is not metaphor. This is mechanism. This is how the law actually operates, and it operates this way whether you understand it or not, whether you intend it or not, whether you believe it or not. The question is never whether the law is working. The law is always working. The question is only, what are you feeding it? What is the state you are living in? What is the identity you have quietly, below all conscious thought, consented to inhabit? Now let us speak about something so practical, so immediately actionable, that if you truly understand it and apply it, it can begin shifting the architecture of your life tonight. Not years from now, not after more study or more preparation or more effort, tonight. Because there is a threshold that you cross every single night of your life, a liminal space between waking and sleeping, where the usual guards of the conscious mind, the critical faculty, the analytical filter, the judging voice that says, this isn't real yet, I can't believe this yet, where's the evidence? All of those guards grow drowsy and drop their weapons. And in that sacred, tender, fertile threshold between consciousness and sleep, the subconscious mind becomes as open and receptive as a freshly plowed field, waiting for seed. Neville Goddard called this the state akin to sleep, that hypnagogic threshold where imagination becomes extraordinarily powerful, where a feeling held with sincerity and warmth bypasses every defense mechanism of the rational mind and sinks directly into the subconscious, where it is received not as a wish or a hope or a prayer, but as a fact, as a reality, as a condition to be fulfilled. And the subconscious mind, that infinitely powerful, ceaselessly working, completely obedient servant of whatever identity you give it, takes that seed and begins immediately to grow it, to express it, to draw into your waking life the people, the circumstances, the opportunities, the synchronicities, the shifts in your own perception and behavior that will make the imagined state an outer reality. This is why the last thought before sleep is the most important thought of your day. This is why the feeling you carry into the darkness matters more than anything else you did between the rising and the setting of the sun. Because what you bring to that threshold, what you feel in the moment before your conscious mind releases its grip on the wheel, that is the instruction. That is the prayer that actually gets answered. And it is answered not by a distant God weighing your petitions on scales of judgment, but by the infinite intelligence of your own deeper mind, expressing what it has been given as an identity to embody. Let this settle into your spirit. You are never truly passive at night. You are always planting something. The only question is whether you are planting consciously or by default, deliberately or accidentally, from a place of fear and lack, or from a place of peace and assumed wholeness. Most people bring the residue of the day to their beds, the accumulated tension, the replayed conversations, the rehearsed worries, the catalogued disappointments, and wonder why they wake up in the same life they went to sleep in. The revolutionary act is to interrupt that pattern. The revolutionary act is to, in those last moments before sleep, reach past all of the evidence of the outer world and find the feeling, not the thought, not the visualization, but the felt sense, the emotional texture of the desire already fulfilled, the relationship already loving, the health already restored, the peace already present, the abundance already real. And this feeling does not have to be dramatically powerful. It does not have to be a thunderclap of conviction. The most effective seeds are planted gently. A quiet contentment, a soft satisfaction, a whispered, "Yes, this is my life now." A relaxed and easy certainty, the way you feel about things you already completely take for granted. You do not strain to believe that you have a body. You do not effortfully remember that you have a name. These things are simply settled in you, and that settledness, that quiet, taken-for-granted certainty, is the feeling state you are learning to extend to your desires, to move them from the category of things I am hoping for to the category of things that are already so. This shift, this movement from hoping to having, from wanting to being, is the entire teaching. It is the whole law. Everything else is elaboration. But we must also speak about the past, because many people carry within them the weight of memories that are actively undermining their ability to assume a new identity. Trauma, guilt, regret, the old story of who you were told you were, who you once believed yourself to be. These are not simply memories. They are active imaginal acts. They are states you continue to visit and re-inhabit with emotional vividness. And every time you do, you are replanting the same seed, reconfirming the same identity, resending the same instruction to the subconscious mind. The past is not as fixed as it appears. The past is not a sealed vault containing an unchangeable record. The past is a living landscape that is continuously maintained and given power by your present imaginal consent to it. This is perhaps the most liberating teaching in the entire field of consciousness and transformation, and it is the teaching most directly connected to the process that Neville called revision. You must realize that you can revise the emotional meaning of any memory, not by denying that it happened, not by forcing false positivity onto genuine pain, but by entering that remembered scene in your imagination and allowing it to end differently, or by simply allowing the feeling associated with it to soften, to change, to release its grip. When you alter the emotional tone of a remembered experience, you are not lying to yourself. You are exercising your sovereign authority as a consciousness to determine what state you continue to live in. You are choosing which version of the past you give your ongoing energy to. And as you do this, as you gently, persistently, lovingly revise the emotional narrative of your own history, something remarkable begins to happen. The identity that was built upon those painful memories begins to loosen. The beliefs about yourself that were cemented in place by those experiences begin to dissolve. And into the space they occupied flows a new sense of self, freer, more open, more capable, more deserving, that then naturally begins to attract and generate outer circumstances that match it. This is healing at the level of identity, which is the only level where healing is ultimately real. You can treat the symptoms of a wound endlessly at the surface level of behavior and circumstance, but until the identity from which those symptoms arise has been changed, until the I am at the core of your being has been revised, the same patterns will continue to replay in new forms. The faces will change, the names will change, the setting will change, but the experience will echo the same story, because the story lives inside you, not outside you. The outer world is the echo, you are the voice. Feel this deeply, because this is where the teaching of living in the end becomes not a technique, but a way of being. To live in the end does not mean to fantasize about a future that you are waiting to arrive. It means to actually inhabit, in your body, in your feeling, in your entire energetic orientation, the state that would be yours if the desired condition were already fully manifested. It means to walk through your day with the quiet bearing of someone who already has what they desire, not because you are pretending to the outer world, not as a performance for anyone else, but as an inner alignment, a private settling into the felt reality of the thing already given. This is what is meant in the scriptures when it says, "Therefore I tell you, whatever you ask in prayer, believe that you have received it, and it will be yours." Not believe that you will receive it, believe that you have received it. Past tense, already done, already real in the only realm where anything is ever first real, the realm of your inner state, your felt identity, your assumed being. And this state, this condition of already having, already being, already knowing, is characterized always by rest, not by the feverish excitement of someone who has just heard that something wonderful is on its way, not by the anxious monitoring of someone watching their circumstances for signs of change, but by the deep, quiet, unshakable peace of someone for whom the thing is already settled, who has already moved past the question of whether it will happen, because the inner conviction of having is so complete that the outer evidence is simply a formality still working itself out through time. This is the rest that creates. This is the surrender that is not weakness but power, the power of a consciousness so settled in its own being that the entire machinery of the universe must orient itself to serve that being's expression. The sun does not strain to rise, the river does not effort its way to the sea, the flower does not force itself to bloom. Each of these follows its own deepest nature with a perfect, unhurried, unstoppable certainty, and in doing so, each one participates in the ongoing creation of a world of extraordinary beauty and order. You are not less than the sun, you are not less than the river. You are consciousness itself, the very awareness in which all of these phenomena arise and pass away. And your deepest nature, when you allow it, when you rest into it, when you stop fighting against it with the exhausting armor of who you think you should have to be, is creative, whole, abundant, and free. This is why every tradition that has touched genuine truth has always in some form taught silence, has always pointed to meditation, to contemplative prayer, to the stillness beneath thought, not as a technique for calming a stressed nervous system, though it is also that, but as the fundamental act of returning to the source, of returning to the place where you know yourself, not as a collection of circumstances and histories and social identities, but as the awareness from which all of that arises. The I am before anything follows it, the pure being before it is qualified by any condition. And in this return, in this remembering, there is a natural reorientation of identity toward wholeness, toward abundance, toward the fulfilled state that is in truth the most natural thing in the world, because it is not something you are striving to become. It is something you are gradually consenting to remember that you already are. The teaching of consciousness has always been a teaching of remembrance, not acquisition. You are not building something from nothing. You are uncovering what was always already present beneath the accumulated layers of doubt and conditioning and fear and limitation that were placed upon you by a world that did not know any better. Every assumption of lack that you release reveals more of the wholeness that was always underneath. Every revision of a painful memory that you carry out loosens another layer of a false identity. Every evening in which you carry yourself to sleep in the feeling of the wish fulfilled plants another seed in the most fertile soil available to any human being. And gradually, sometimes suddenly, the outer world begins to rearrange itself around the new inner center of gravity you have established. You are not waiting for the world to change before you give yourself permission to rest in wholeness. You are resting in wholeness now, in this moment, in this very act of reading and receiving these words, and allowing that rest to be the seed from which the changed world grows. This is the sequence, not the world changes, then I feel at peace, but I feel at peace, then the world changes. Not I get what I want, then I relax into certainty. But I relax into certainty, then I get what I want. This reversal of sequence is the entire secret. It is the teaching hidden in plain sight at the center of every genuine spiritual tradition that has ever existed on this earth. And it is not complicated. It is in fact the simplest thing in the world. So simple that the complex and efforting mind almost cannot receive it, because it looks for something difficult to do, something impressive to achieve, some sophisticated practice to master. But the invitation is simply to be, to rest, to allow, to consent, quietly, privately, deeply, to the identity of the person who already has, who already is, who already lives in the fullness of what was once merely desired. To carry that identity not as a performance, but as a settled knowing. To bring it to the threshold of sleep with a gentle warmth and a quiet certainty. To wake with it soft in your body and carry it through your day not as a mask, but as a remembering. And to let the outer world do what it inevitably must do when the inner world has truly shifted, which is to follow. The body knows how to heal itself when you stop flooding it with the chemistry of fear. The mind knows how to solve its own problems when you stop flooding it with the noise of panic. The life knows how to organize itself around abundance when you stop flooding the subconscious with the imagery of lack. This is not magic, though it can look like magic to those who do not understand the mechanism. This is law. This is the precise and impartial operation of a principle that has always been at work, always will be at work, and is at work right now in your life, producing exactly what your dominant inner state has been commanding it to produce. The invitation, then, the only invitation that has ever truly mattered in this entire field of teaching, is to shift that dominant inner state, not through effort, not through striving, not through the exhausting project of trying to convince yourself of something your rational mind keeps pushing back against, but through the gentle, persistent, patient practice of rest, the practice of breathing, the practice of softening the body and allowing the mind to grow quiet. The practice of, in those moments of quiet, reaching for the feeling of the desired state and holding it, lightly, warmly, without grasping, without strain, the way you would hold something infinitely precious and infinitely fragile, and then releasing it, trusting it, letting it go into the depths of your own being, where the infinite intelligence that beats your heart and grows your cells and coordinates the trillion silent processes of your biology takes it and begins immediately to build the life that matches it. You are never more powerful than when you are at rest. You are never more creative than when you have surrendered effort. You are never more aligned with the law that governs all creation than when you stop trying to force outcomes and start simply being, wholly, quietly, completely, the person for whom the desired outcome is already real. This is the art of living. This is the secret of transformation. This is the practice that changes everything without looking like it is doing anything. And tonight, when the world grows quiet and the day releases its grip on you and you begin to drift toward that sacred threshold between waking and sleep, remember this. Remember that in that soft and open space, you hold something extraordinary in your hands. You hold the power to plant a new world in the dark and fertile soil of your own deeper mind. Plant something beautiful. Plant something whole. Plant something that matches the fullness of what you have always known. Somewhere beneath all the noise and doubt and struggle that you are truly meant to be. And then rest. Simply, completely, trustingly rest. And let the law do what the law has always done and will always do. Bring forth from the invisible into the visible, from the within to the without, from the state assumed in silence to the life experienced in time, exactly and precisely and inevitably what you have consented to be.